Welcome back for another episode of KYB or Know Your Builder, the series of episodes where we highlight and we interview projects and builders from our space. I'm Sinkas, joined here with Christoph, my colleague and head of governance at L2Beat. And today we are joined by Justice and Tam Helenius, and they are working at Quadratic Accelerator, which I don't want to describe because I'll probably do a bad job at describing it. So I'll let them introduce it and explain to us what it is. Tam, Justice, hello and welcome.
Hey,
What's
thanks for
up?
having
Glad
us.
to be here.
Nice to have you. So who's the right person to give us a brief explanation of what quadratic acceleration is?
I would love to hear Tam tell it.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yes, I'd love to. When I explain it to people, I try to sum it down into some ways that that's easy to say that people can understand. And the way I describe it is it's a DeFi native, I say Web3 protocol with most people. It's a Web3 protocol that helps chains transform grant capital into token bonded economies. And they can do that with predictable TVL boost and really commitment from the builders that they're allocating these grants to. And it helps projects launch a token with bootstrap liquidity built into the protocol and fair terms for all stakeholders. And I think that matters to a lot of builders, not rugging their community with a token drop that ends up just going down for the next subsequent 6 months. And then it helps communities get early stake access to projects that are building really cool things in Web3, but not being the exit capital that they are sometimes for token launches. So it's a token launch protocol using augmented bonding curves as the underlying mechanism and quadratic funding as a sort of community signal incentive for community participation.
Augmented bonding curves, launching, like, I'm sure you have a great way of explaining and breaking down all those things, and I'm looking forward to doing that. Before we do that, could we get a quick brief intro in who you people are? Like, what's your role in Quadratic Accelerator, what you're doing, and maybe a little bit of your background as well.
Sure. Why don't you start this one, Justice?
Okay, cool. Yeah, my name is Justice. I go by 0x Justice and, crypto land, and my actual real name is Justice. People's ask, is that your actual name? I'm like, yeah, I'm fake anon, right? But I used to be a developer. I went back to school for computer programming in 2009. And then over the years kind of turned into more like an IT project manager. And then for about 5 years, became a kind of agile coach, scrum master, focused on org design and like what's large scale software delivery. It really caught my imagination. But I always found that, you were still trying to drive by mandate. You're like, hey, we wrote a handbook. These are the things. And the closest you could get to automating how organizations work was like DevOps. And so when I found out, like when DAOs reach a certain level of maturity, where it was, tried to make my first DAO on Aragon and it like failed, and it still cost me like $30 on a failed transaction. Not a great first experience, right? But it's like years later, I'm like, dude, it was like the DAO bull run, bankless DAO launch, and I was like, man, you could actually design organizations with code, not mandate, but the rules are baked in. It's the only way it can work. So I went out of my mind on DAOs. And then, sometime later, ended up at Polygon Labs, focused on their DAO initiative, and then landed in the Treasury in grant. And that's when it was like, there's got to be a better way to do this grant thing. It's just flushing money down the toilet. And then it was like, that's how I found about the augmented bonding curve. And I was like, oh, this is it. And then that's how I met Tam and Griff and how I came to be in this QAC thing,
All right. And Tamara or Tam, what about you?
I love this question because it's kind of like, what did you do in the past? But it's really like, so what's your origin story? And it's just like, because that's like, what are we doing here? Like, how did we end up in this space, right? And my background is in definitely more traditional digital media. I've worked for a lot of larger companies. I've been building products for a very long time, building mission critical delivery services and programs for Google, Sony Music, Capgemini, Societe Generale, like very traditional. For many years, I was doing management consulting with a French, like the Accenture of France. I called it Capgemini. And I just really, really disillusioned with what I was doing. I worked for Jim Cramer. I don't know if you know Jim Cramer, CNBC pundit, Mad Money. You know, he gets a bad rap because everything he tells you to do, like the opposite happens. And this was true back when I was working for him. And I was working for him during the financial meltdown. So it was like 2006, 2007, 2008 when I ended up leaving for a different country. But essentially, you know, if you want to know how the sausage is made, you find out, and then you never want to eat another sausage. And so I definitely felt like we're in a rigged game, and there's no opt-out mechanism, and they just have us, and they're exploiting us. And I know this sounds a little dramatic, but it really felt like that. And they're, you know, and so, you know, fast forward to probably the late 2016. I had my second child, and I was on a maternity leave, and I was just scrolling through TED Talks, and I came across TED Talk by Don Tapscott, and he approached the philosophical point of view of why blockchains are going to be so important in shaping the future society. And as a parent, right, it's like, okay, raising people in the society that's coming, I should have some influence there. And so the word he used was disintermediation, and I would say that's my North Star, and everything that I try to do in this space and everything that I try to build is just to disintermediate. And I think that our only option for like opting out of the systems that aren't working for us economically, culturally, ecologically, our only opportunity is to build something in parallel that then allows more people to sort of come into this life raft, right? And opt out of those systems. So that's how I got involved. I spent really so skeptical. I mean, it took me like years. You know, I did the Bitcoin Princeton course on Coursera, and I was just like, I just don't believe this is possible. And so there's like a lot of skepticism, obviously a lot of speculation. I'm pretty prudent. So I'd say like my speculation was like, it took me 3 months to decide on what centralized exchange to use. And so I ended up just kind of wanting to educate. Like as I was learning, I wanted to tell everyone about it. I was like, I can't keep this to myself. I had a knowledge, kind of like a salon in Paris where it was a knowledge exchange for women, invited a lot of people, and I would just tell them about blockchain. I would tell them about crypto. I would explain it as simple as I could. And then I'd set up everyone with like a BRD wallet at the time, which is now Coinbase acquired, but I'd set everyone up with a BRD wallet, and then we'd like send each other $5 in Bitcoin, which is like amazing to see now, because now it's like so much more than $5. And they all lost it, I'm sure. It's all gone. It's like, and then I did, what is their name? I forget their name, but it's like, I did a master's level course at École Supérieure in Paris of traditional finance markets versus crypto finance markets. And I just really got absolutely like unshakable, true believer. And then I felt like my hands were too clean and I wanted to build things. And so at some point I came across a group, specifically Common Stack. It was Griff Green, Jeff Emmett, Dr. Michael Zargum for Block Science was heavily involved in a lot of the research that we were doing then. Jessica Zartler, Laura. I mean, there was just a lot of really cool people doing interesting things, and I immediately became part of that group. And eventually we built out things like the Token Engineering Commons, which was an interesting experiment on like a Commons DAO. So my foray was like building DAOs and cultural systems and technical stacks alongside that. And eventually a lot of that research and applied engineering ended up being a lot of the fundamentals that we're using in the Quadratic Accelerator now.
And just love learning about origin stories of people in crypto, because especially people that are working at very cutting edge of stuff, like not working for a big company in crypto. No shade to the people that do, but anyone could easily apply to work customer support for Coinbase, right? And you do have something to do with crypto, but it's not really crypto. But anyone can end up doing that, but from whatever background, becoming through a year or two, 5, whatever time it takes, to building something at the very edge of like Quadratic Acceleration for grants. That's just amazing to see how that whole timeline evolves. So yeah, amazing to hear that.
Yeah, and speaking about launching, let's get back to the product, because we want to, the goal of this series is to present ecosystems through the products that we actually have there, things that we could use. So let's get to this. And you said that it's a token launcher for projects. So, but then you used a lot of quite complicated words. So from the practical standpoint, let's say that I'm a project that wants to launch using QAC. How does it look like? What do I do? How does it work?
And if I can, like, I want to ask an additional question that goes just a tiny step before that. Like, what is the problem that you saw and you're trying to solve with QAC? So like, what's the reason behind its very existence first, and then how it kind of like works?
Okay, I'll describe it in this way. I really love like platform theory, and so much of crypto is built on creating these programmable platforms and multi-sided marketplaces, right? And right now, for the most part, crypto is a perfect dissonance of like actors working against each other. Chains have almost limitless resources, and they need to attract projects, so they issue grants. The bigger the grant, the more they inflate their token, and their runway actually decreases, right? They're like, we can do this for 5 years, then we spend all the tokens. Projects, on the other hand, are like, hey, we want grants to build, but the grant is just kind of like another fish. It actually doesn't give them a fishing rod. And so they end up in this anti-pattern of grant farming, okay? And no sustainability. And then end users, people coming in, they're not builders or whatever, they want access to early stage projects. And the earliest stage they can get are projects that have already received hundreds of millions of dollars, that are already, their token is worth over 100 million. They have a cap table with 10, 20, 50 investors. And so they're not really getting early access. They had it in the ICO era, but no longer. And so what we do is we say, hey, let's rejigger this whole system. And we go to chains and we say, hey, you were normally giving out grants to projects directly. How about you sponsor their token launch by taking the grant you would have given them directly and putting it in this protocol? This launches a token for this team that generates yield when it's traded. So the team actually gets sustainability. They get revenue based upon their economy, right? And they get a token launch, which is usually expensive, but they get it for free. And then end users can buy this token directly from the public. There are no investors involved with this, right? And they're getting this token before any investors have touched it. And it's less than $500,000 in value. And so they're getting the, hey, I can get in real early, like a meme coin, but it's real projects. And the chains at the end of the day, rather than inflating their token, because of the way we use this crypto bonding curve, they pump their TVL, total value locked. So every dollar that goes into this, we create 10x TVL on their chain. So we create this 3-sided marketplace where each of the parties get something they didn't get before, and the end is more than the sum of the parts. Does that land with you guys?
But how does it work? Like, normally, if the chain is giving a grant to a project, like the project receives this grant, liquidates part of it, and can cover bills and stuff like that. But in
Yep.
your case, the project is not receiving the grant, but rather
Yes.
this grant is locked in liquidity pool, if I remember
Yep.
correctly. So
Yep.
how do project members pay bills?
Well, here's the thing. It's about the stage. It's ultimately about the stage. We select projects based upon their appropriateness of how they fit into this. If they say, hey, we don't have enough money to the end of the month, they're not a good fit. If they're lean and they have, 6 months to a year runway, then we can work with that. Because again, there's yield, there's fees generated from this token economy, and those fees go to the project liquid. They can use that. And so it's about finding the right fit. And there's another side of this too, is that it's not a one tool for everything. Really, every chain should have crafted and be thinking in terms of like an ecosystem growth funnel. And so there are different parties in there as far as like, hey, we do milestone based grants for super early stage. And then among those that really stand out, maybe we do a protocol sponsored tokenization for them where we give them, and then maybe some that are like outstanding from those that really stand out, we connect them directly to our BD team to say, hey, maybe they're investors that want to buy their token that's now liquid. And so designing this type of funnel is a way to get these projects and provide the support they need at their various stages of development. And that's why we work closely with other like ecosystem support partners, like Polygon has a bunch, and we're not competing with them. We kind of collaborate on how best to support the different projects,
So it's not aimed for, oftentimes those grants programs are creating, let's say RFPs to incentivize builders to build things that the chain might need or want. But those are kind of like created from zero, right? So oftentimes what Christoph said is the reality is like they want the grant to pay their compensation, to pay their bills, etc., etc. So that's not kind of like your focus, but rather your focus is people have started building something already. They do have maybe some runway, or they are kind of like at a better spot. They do not need the funds immediately, but rather they want to create a more sustainable future for what they're building.
Exactly. And there are other groups out there that do the earlier stage milestone base, and we partner with them and we say, hey, who's outstanding projects for you? They'll be like, hey, these guys. And vice versa too. We have some where we're like, listen, they have something really awesome and the token launch is going well, and maybe they could get some more help on get some liquid assets to reach these milestones. And they're like, yeah, we love them. And so it's about coming together and providing the full orbed support in that way.
I mean, I like the way you phrase that, because it's also, we're a part of the ecosystem. We're not sort of independent outside of the ecosystem. And so a lot of the deal flow that can come into our program or into the accelerator comes from like, graduate, like prize winners of hackathons, right? Or like a really good candidate, or, projects that, okay, so I'll come back to how do they pay their bills issue, because I think that's the most important thing actually for all of us who are building in Web3. But one of the things is, if there's a project that's trying something out and they're experimenting, but most of those projects don't actually need a token yet. Our accelerator is really fine-tuned for not just founders that are building something cool, but they're building something cool and their cool thing actually really needs a token. And if they don't, then this is not the right mechanism for them. And then the thing about how they pay their bills, I know Justice explained it, but I just want to double click on it because I think it's so important. This isn't we don't direct operating capital to the projects, but we do give them the ability to, they have a token supply. The initial token supply is largely to 95% held, the claims to the unlock is held by the project, or they can even split some of that token supply, the initial token to supply, to investors. So if they wanted to give a 5% allocation of their initial token supply so that it's claimable as it unlocks, everything stays locked for the vesting period, which is 2 years with a 1-year cliff, but they could split the initial supply so that they could have operating capital upfront at the launch of their token. Or after the allocation has already happened, a SAFT agreement for a future unlock token instead of a future token.
Okay, it all looks and sounds very promising. Maybe it's time for us to see it. How about could you please like share the screen and show us how exactly does it look like? And like if let's say that I create a new project called KRST and I want to launch a token, like how do I approach you? What do I do?
So we run in seasons, okay? Right now we're in season 2. We went live a couple days ago. And the way this works is you can see this on a spectrum of every kind of token launchpad or, and then there's a self-serve and then a curated. We're starting on the curated side because these are sponsored. These are paid for by chains, okay? We'll grow into a self-serve or start in here. And so if you're a project and you're like, man, we would love this, then we would say apply, reach out. We'll officially open applications again when this season is over. And we're working on some cool stuff in the background on where we can have applications happening on a rolling basis and auto kind of evaluate and do messaging and all that, right? And so from a project, just reach out directly. We're still early. You can literally DM us and we're like, oh, hello, hey, but so that's on that side. On the side of actually getting the tokens for the various projects, that's a little more straightforward because the round is open and I can demonstrate that now. Sound good?
Oh, let's dig into that.
Okay, cool. So I just landed on QAC website. You'll notice our domain is at the Giveth, because we're actually incubated in Giveth, because this is we operate very similar to Quadratic funding, this kind of amplifying people's donations, but we actually mint tokens, right? But we do it in a similar type of way. And so here we are on the website. I come over and I hit, just take a minute to appreciate the aesthetic. This hits right now. Before you know anything how this works, it's like, hell yeah to this thing. Look at that. Okay, so I hit launch app. I come in here and I have purposefully connected a wallet that I've never used with this thing before, right? And first thing it says, hey, do you agree with terms of service, laundering money and doing criminal activity? I am not. Yes, I agree. Create profile. Now I come in here. My name is John Smith. I'm especially starting early to demonstrate how kind of fast and easy this is. Now I've already used my million emails on everything. So I'm just gonna put in a kind of burner email here. And I don't like pictures, so I skip that part. Save and continue. Now, here's where it gets cool. If I want to contribute, if I want to amplify the money that I spend here to contribute to the team's liquidity pool on the DEX, I need to authenticate that I'm one person. We have to do civil protection so that if I can't pretend to be 100 people and come in here and support one project and then they get an outsized prize, okay? Because we amplify what they get based upon individual supporters. So if I want to do that, I have to show my proof of humanity, human passport, and I can click here and collect my socials and be like, if I connected enough socials, yeah, he's probably one person, good. If I'm like, listen, I want to go big. I actually want to spend more than $1,000. That's where we use Bravado or ZKID, which is a little more intense. You actually show your ID. It does like this ZK magic. It doesn't store it, but it does it in such a way that it knows that you're a real person, right? Now look at this. We introduced this fast lane. I'm going to skip verification, and I'm in. Look at me, John Smith, and let's see. Okay, I love Web3 packs.
Can I just stop and intervene for just one moment? Because
Please.
There's an important distinction between the account that skips verification and the other accounts, because there is a matching pool. And the reason that there's verification in 2 different levels is so that one of the, so that they, the token purchases, which influence the matching pool allocation, we have civil protection against. And the skip verification means you're also kind of foregoing your influence on the allocation. So that's just sort of the trade-off of that. You go fast, you don't need to validate, but you also don't influence the allocation.
This makes sense. Yeah.
So I hopped in here, Web3 packs, so cool. They make it so you can zip up arbitrary tokens in an NFT like a backpack and then send this to someone. And so I could go get tokens of my favorite meme tokens, zip it up in a pack and send it. And this way someone can onboard, and instead of making like 100 transactions, you can listen, I zipped up a pack of the coolest like DeFi tokens or DAO governance tokens, or this is your starter pack on welcome to Web3, send it. These guys are awesome, built on charged particles. So I'm like, listen, I want to get some of these tokens. So I go in here, I'm like, yeah, looks good. I am on, yes, I'm on Polygon, and I'm going to put in 50. Oh, come on, let's not be cheap. I'm putting in 100 poll. Now, one thing that's cool is, let's say I had a different token or on a totally different chain, I could go ahead and pick that here. I don't need to go to a bridge. I don't need to swap or whatever ahead of time. I can do it on the fly. Make anonymous and buy token. And then you obviously don't see the pop-up. I got one, and they're like, hey, transaction request.
And is that buys the tokens from all the projects that are like this Web3 packs? Is it like a single project, or is it like a
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, it's a single project.
Okay.
It's the charged particles is the protocol, and then they were like, we need an enshrined product on top of it to make it more understandable, and this is that, the Web3 packs. And so, boom, there we go. Then I must share it on socials. No, you don't have to, but should. Hey, I supported all this, and so the way this works is now I can go to, let's see, I can go to my account. And then I can actually see every token I got on here. And the way this works is during this 2-week window, people come in and get all these tokens and all. And normally, if you were doing this on a token bonding curve, a person who bought the token 5 seconds before me would get a better deal than me. We don't want to encourage that kind of poor user experience. And so there's a batch buy at the end of the round. So everyone gets the same price during this 2-week period. But then after this 2-week period, we list these on a DEX. And so you have a vesting built in because you got this token at a really great price, right? You can't dump it right away. There's vesting. So you decide, do I want to get the token? I'll pay more when it's fully liquid, listed on the DEX at the end of the 2 weeks, where I could just trade and sell, like speculate. Or do I actually believe in the project and I want to get a better price, and I'll get it now and I'm willing to take the vesting? And that's like the trade-off mechanism. And the big distinguishing factor here, among other many things, is that this team cannot rug you. They're vested as a team. The early supporters have a vesting schedule. And so this nonsense you see every day on socials of investors going in, they bought tokens, and then on the day it listed, the price drops 30%. It's impossible. Because of the protection built in the protocol. And so that's a big distinguishing factor here. Safe, early, and trustworthy. Secured by DeFi primitives, not trust me, bro stuff, you know?
So basically, the day that this token launches on DEX,
Yep.
all the investors receive their allocation, but it's vested. So they cannot dump. So the only liquid part of the token is the one that is actually bought in this liquidity pool that we just contributed to, right?
That's it.
Okay.
And the participants in the QAC round have a shorter vesting than the project. So their vesting is depending on the season of the project that they're vesting. But for season 2, it's 1 year with 6 months. For the previous season, you shrink that by 2 months. And every future season, you sort of shrink it by 2 months so that the participants in the QAC round always vest completely or completely unlock prior to the project.
And what is the exact token allocation? Like how do I see who got how much and how much has the team, for example? Where do I see it?
So I don't know. I mean, we have Dune dashboards which show that. I don't have that up. one of the things that we are doing is we're building actually a new, I think it's okay to give you guys a sneak peek. We're building a new dashboard. So our incubation under Giveth was just had some technical constraints about what we were able to build. So we're building something new. I'm going to go ahead and share this with you. It is not a live product, but we're working with a digital agency and we're building out basically our mockups. I'm building the mockups in Replit because I'm now completely addicted to vibe coding. But you can see here, this is not that this would actually end up being here. You know, you could go to Gecko Terminal. There'll be links for Dex Screener and Gecko Terminal and the June dashboards. This was just working a minute ago. I'm not sure why the top 10 token holders, but you'll see the top 10 token holders and the percentage of tokens that each of them are holding. So the idea is in this version that we have right now, we don't make that visible, and we know that that's not great. Of course, you could look at the smart contracts and look at Block Explorer, and it's all visible to somebody who knows how to see it. But we really want to make that transparent for future projects. I mean, for in our next platform.
Awesome. And I've got one more question. Can we go back to the to this round?
Yeah.
This the season 2 webpage. This matching pool, 500,000 pool. What is it? How does it work?
The matching pool?
Yeah.
So it works.
Yes.
It's very traditional. It's like quadratic funding. It's the way quadratic funding works. So essentially, it amplifies community over oversizing. It makes it so that people like, for example, if you go to what PF is QF.com or whatever that website is, you can actually see it in action. It's a really nice interactive there. But essentially it means like if one, a way to divvy up this allocation. So it's not like 1 for 1 for every dollar, it's matched $1. It's a way for every community, every purchase to have an influence, and the size of the purchase and the number of the purchases influence. So a bunch of $10 purchases would be equal to one, would have the same weight or more weight than $100 purchase, for example. I think I did
Look at it like this.
I feel like
Each
Chris's
project.
Sorry, Justice. I feel like Chris's question is also, where's that money coming from? Like, where does the poll coming from? Who's matching?
The chain sponsors the round, and the money they provide is really split between two places. One is the seed capital that initializes the bonding curve for each project, which creates their token and its value, right? And then the other portion is used in this competitive dynamic, like how big is their LP going to be on the DEX? And so if one project has 100 supporters and another has 1, then the one with 100 will actually have a larger pool on the DEX. And so the idea is that since we run these every few months, projects that were in the previous season are automatically included. And what happens is they gradually increase their market cap, their token supply, because of the bonding curve. It's a dynamic supply that grows, right? And also the size of their LP on the DEX until they reach this exciting point of graduation. And so that's what it accumulates.
So basically, this pool will be divided by the projects that are in this round, and they will be divided not equally, but the more supporters any given project has, the more share, like part of this pool, they will receive, right? So, for example, if I am a supporter of How to DAO book project and I participated in it, it's in my best interest not just to participate, but also to convince Synkas, Manu, and other people in L2B to participate as well, and to share it as broadly as possible so that as many people can participate in this particular project, because in that case, the bigger part of this pool will be allocated to this project and the better for me. Is this correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You should go do podcasts for us and say this exactly.
And also
like the simple math.
Yeah, and it also ties to what they were saying earlier about the civil protection. Like if you've proved your identity and everything, your support is more influential.
Yeah, and like it quadratic funding invites Sybil because, 10 supporters giving $10 is so much more influential than one supporter giving 100. Like the value is the same, but the signal is so much stronger. So they will get an outsized portion of the pool in that comparison, right? And so having more wallets is advantageous for anyone if they want to game the system. And that's why the non-verified make it impossible to detect Sybil, and that's why they just don't have any influence on the allocation. I wanted to show this. Justice mentioned the graduation phase. There's 3 phases to the program, right? You sort of have this initialization phase where you're accepted into the program, and then you launch your bonding curve and you go into the first QX rounds and you have your DEX listing. And this happens within 8 to 10 weeks, And then over time, you can come back into every new quadratic round. So you continue to build secondary market liquidity in every round. And you have these KPIs that you want to reach, because the goal for these projects is the sort of capital injection after they graduate. So they slowly build their reserve pool, which is the collateral under the bonding curve, and it grows and it grows and it grows, and it sort of starts at the 50K, and then it grows to 100K, and then once it reaches around $1 million or a $10 million market cap, or 8 million, a $10 million market cap, then you turn off the minting function, allowing the project to the price to sort of go as high as it needs, as it wants, without any constraint from the bonding curve. And then we turn off the bonding curve, or the protocol turns off the bonding curve, and all of the collateral under the bonding curve goes directly to the project. So at the end of graduation, they have a sort of $1 million that they just get to use for their future business purposes.
And the teams also make revenue from the fees of the trading of the token as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. They get 8% of every transaction that flows. So every time their token is traded, they get 8% of that trade.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's creating a revenue stream for those projects. That's really cool. And so seeing the matching pool, I would assume that the first season was in fact in Polygon. Does that mean that is your project deployed on Polygon? Do you have to deploy on each chain that you will collaborate with, or how does it work?
Yeah, for us, we need to be deployed on the chain if they want to sponsor a round. Okay, and so really we want to be a big tool, a big component in a chain's ecosystem growth strategy. And we think that there's an enlightened way to do this, and that we want to feed into that, with their other, sometimes people compare us to these other kind of grant programs or whatnot. And they're like, hey, we're launching on Tuesday. Can you do it? It's like, well, this is a full DeFi protocol. We actually deploy contracts and have vesting and all this. So there's something there. And so for projects, if a chain is sponsoring the round, that project is deploying their token on that chain. And we make it easy for supporters to abstract away that complexity. They can come in here and spend whatever's in their wallet. I think Griff the other day in testing our kind of chain abstraction, spent a bunch of Elon tokens on one of these projects, and it just swapped it in the background. And so that's pretty cool.
Okay, awesome. And all right, and what is how did season 1 go? How did the season that you did in Polygon go? I know that you have published a report and it's out there, so if anyone wants to get more into that, they can. But on a high level, how did it work out for you guys on Polygon?
This is my favorite question, because if somebody is just interested in, I guess, marketing speak and videos and kind of what Bankless podcast is talking about, we're really small fish. But if someone's thinking in terms of
pure analytics and return on investment and actually deeper strategic insight, that's where there's no comparison. We are very confident in this, because in a typical grant program, you spend money and that money dumps 100% of it. Okay, this is what happened for us in our pilot. This was our first season. 1.7 mil poll came in, and then rather than dumping that on the market, we actually increased it by 20% because we create a token sink. Because we actually create demand for these new projects. And so people spend their money, put it into the protocol. So we sucked in another 20% of the native token. In the process, tokenized 8 projects, and then create a 17 million poll market cap across these 8 projects. And so that's a 10x ROI. Instead of dumping their token, they do this crazy TVL pump, and I know that it's a bit trendy right now to talk about TVL's dead. We want like active TVL. And it's like, listen, we're working on it. We've already been working on it. We know what's up, right? And then in the first week alone, we have 40,000 trading volume. And so also because, as you mentioned, Christoph, because the early supporters pay for the great price with the vesting, that means at listing point, the price can only go up relative to poll. And so right when we listed these on the DEX, the whole market kind of we thought, oh, is this the end of crypto? It was so bad. We're still up, right? Because of the way this works. And so this is the return on investment for the chains and then the projects as well. And so we're excited to do even better in season 2 and to go even bigger in season 3. So.
Christoph, I can feel that you have a question there.
Yeah, so like I wanted to actually move forward because like now I get it, and it sounds exciting. So the way I understand that you basically help projects launch their token in an effective way and help projects basically. So you are facilitating this growth of these builders. And as I understand, you also do the creation, so you don't just like accept everybody, but you select who and which projects is your model appropriate for and is useful for, and that's what you do. So you kind of like accelerate the projects. But I wanted to, so that's what you give to builders. That's what you give to those chains, those ecosystems. But now I would like to focus on you. I would like to learn more about your story, your experience. How was it building this tool? What things have you learned? What was the struggle? What surprised you? And what went pretty well? How was working with those chains? Like, tell us your story.
Do you want to go first, Tam?
Oh, there's so much. I just don't even know where to start with this. I mean, yeah, I got some ideas I'll throw out here, or some reflections. One of the things I would say is, just going back to like why we're building this, why this matters so much. I go back to that term disintermediation, right? And like early access, I've been using this slogan like early access by design. The mechanism is the message. The idea is, we are disintermediating the middleman, the bankers who allow companies to IPO, who allow people to get in early on really promising web projects, Web 2 projects. But now this is Web 3, so we can disintermediate. I think that we made a lot of decisions that, man, you look back and you're like, it seemed like it made sense at the time, but yeah, it didn't pan out. But that was like, what a mistake. We're gonna do differently this time. And I think a lot of it's just sort of these assumptions that you make, and then you have to sort of implement something that is based on that assumption, and then you need to like reverse out of it. One of the decisions, it's in our white paper, it talks about there having to be this sort of like friends and family, the people that supported the project, to sort of get in before the round. And it turns out that like in hindsight, we don't like that idea anymore. We like the idea of there just being straight to the public, there not being sort of this intermediary access between the launch of the bonding curve and then the launch on the platform. So that's something that we killed in round 2, and I don't see it coming back. And then I would say some of the technical decisions that we made, where we were testing the technical decisions, like 2 weeks before launch, and guess what? It didn't work. So there's like this sudden freak out panic. Okay, like what are we're gonna have this, this bimodal validation, and we're gonna implement human passport alongside this other thing, and so there's these sort of like the assumptions that matter that then you have to revise in future iterations, and then the technical decisions that you have to either pivot from or expand or solve for. Those are the first two that come to mind, and I'm really curious to hear Justice's answer too.
I would say the biggest, I mean, there's a lot, right? But some of them are maybe a bit more obvious. Like the probably obvious one is like the coaching that teams needed to launch their token. I mean, they're early stage, which means they don't have a whole marketing team and stuff. So the level of getting in, it's kind of been like some of the most rewarding to hear pitches and be like, listen, drop that part, add this, and then you hear them come back having practiced this new spin on the pitch. You're like, oh, this is so beautiful. And then them say, hey, this is landing way better with people. And you're just like, hey, goosebumps, man. Like, wow, we helped them kind of nail that, right? So that one's a bit more obvious. The part that wasn't obvious to me that has me in kind of more like kind of existential self-reflection is the psychology. Because, it's easy for us to say like, hey, we cut out the middleman, like the VCs who make this. But the weird part is that the public personas, right? They're actually more likely to buy into a project when the thing has been pumped up by VCs and has this polished look. Even if you were to show them the same project that doesn't have early VCs in pumping it up, and you say, hey, you can get this at a fraction of the price, and it's the same, and they're like, I don't know. Like, they're not as keen. So it's like, wow, man, you really have to think about the psychology of this and all that. And then also, like, we're shaped by the way things have been done. The public actually, if we say, oh, look at these token launches, look, it's down 30%, 40%, 50% after the first 2 weeks, they're like, but it doesn't matter because it launched at some huge valuation. And so it felt like it was significant. If it was like, yeah, I'm buying into this, it's huge, right? But if you say, look, you can buy it down here, and then it grows up organically season over season, and in a year, 2 years, it could be there. And they're like, nah. I'd rather buy the massively inflated, and even if the price drops, the perception and the psychology of it sometimes has me spun out and being like, man, this is deep. So that's been something very interesting to think about, And
I will add, not just marketing for the projects, marketing for ourselves. Like, how do we promote ourselves? How do people find out about us? Like, I find that one of our biggest struggles is being able to tell people about this, explain it. Like, you called me out. I'm like, you're using all these words. That's what I talk to. That's how I talk to normies, and you guys are not. So imagine how much worse it is. Like, being able to explain what this mechanism does and why it's actually like, it's the rug proof is built into the design. Justice, Griff, and myself have been around for a while. We are so done with the casino nonsense, with the crimes, and we're like, we are going to build integrity into the protocol itself, and the community. It's like rug proof for the community. You cannot be rugged by the project, by the protocol. And so explaining that is actually not intuitive for anyone who's not pretty degenerate.
And I want to dig into that further, because I also have an experience from startup acceleration from TradFi. I spent 10 years in mentoring a pre-accelerator. So I know the biggest struggle of projects like that is that at the end you are relying on the success of your of the project that you are incubating. If in order for you to succeed, some of them need to succeed as well, because that's how it works. And it was always, for us, it was always challenging how to help them, because you can't do this for them. You have to somehow help themselves. And I'm wondering, and it seems like you are facing the same issue. You can do best job on selecting and curating the list of projects. You can help them as much as possible with this, token launch. But at the end, like those projects need to succeed. In order for everybody to win, those projects need to succeed and need to prove their value. How to do that? How can we help you help them?
I think a mistake is for us to kind of overestimate what we can and to accept like this is our core competency and it's really our specialization, and how can we partner with other people to help the projects. If we're in the same ecosystem receiving resources from a protocol to produce good, we need to be not competing with other people trying to do the same thing in the ecosystem, but partnering. And so for us, our core competency is token engineering. It is, how do you create a great launch no one can rug and the price organically grows from down to up, right? And like, what are the parameters that are required to make that happen? And so really, I mean, anything as it matures, people get more specialized, and crypto in general needs to recognize that's really what's inevitable. What will happen if we survive and stick around and achieve this great mission, and we represent a big part of that specialization. Up till now,
what is the biggest missing piece apart from, because you are doing your part, but what is the biggest piece that you are seeing like that it would be great if somebody solved this? Because as you mentioned, everybody specializes. You have your own niche. You do great job in that one area, but other areas need to be somehow covered and handled as well. What is the biggest lowest hanging fruit? If we could improve that with projects, then everybody would be way better off.
I would say a thinking in terms of a funnel and mentorship. What I have seen is that a chain, when it's young, it's great at engaging in early stage builders or mid stage builders. As it gets mature and gets bigger name and bigger value, it almost abandons that scale of projects and begins to just focus on like, oh, look, we're tokenizing securities, and if it's anything under 100 million, we're not interested in the BD. Like the BD gets so kind of big that all the small fish get almost left in the dust. And so like an engineered mindset and approach to how do you maintain the mentorship of the smaller and earlier stage, and also a philosophy that understands the value. Because if you help them and you're connected with them at that, you're not paying a premium when they are successful and you're coming in fresh, and so that mentorship all the way up. So, a very scientifically minded approach to ecosystem growth, honestly, I think is lacking in all of Web3.
Yeah,
I love that. Pam, do you want to add something to that?
Can you fix the market sentiment towards crypto? Like genie in a bottle.
Doing everything we can.
Same.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to also ask kind of like a similar question to Christoph, because I feel like you're in this very interesting position in my mind where you are building something yourselves, like a protocol. You are also working with builders that launch their tokens to build their protocols and fund that. But you're also working with chains, and you kind of like, I assume you do have some level of insight on what each chain is kind of like wanting to grow on their chain. Like I assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but do you get those matching pools from the chains? Do they sponsor the program just unilateral, like anything that's being built on our chain, or do they have like specific not requirements, but focus areas, let's say?
I would say the answer to that question is critical as we're thinking about season 3. Season 1 was you call it like pilot, prove the concept, how do we do, these are the numbers. Season 2, significantly smaller, and I would say the maturity of the project was significantly higher, right? So we're like, okay, cool. Season 3, I think, is the opportunity like months from now to see what chains want to be a part of season 3 and to connect with their, chief growth officers about what is lacking. We can go in with sufficient time and analyze like, what are the main projects there? What are the missing pieces? What is their North Star they're trying to hit? Maybe they're trying to hit something that's more high profile marketing. Maybe they're trying to hit something more fundamental, TBL, or something in between where it's just a certain enshrined categories of projects, the NFT or Launchpad or whatever. I don't know, right? Prediction markets, we don't know. But if we can strategize with them, then we can get them. Almost every project that came and applied through QAC, they weren't like, we love Polygon, we want to launch on Polygon. They're like, we're just building cool stuff and like, hey, well, we're launching here. It was the value proposition of a turnkey tokenization that they were like, hell yes. They wanted it. They're like, we are building. We don't have the expertise or the time to do this. You're going to do it for us. We see how it works. No one can get rugged on this. This is awesome. And that's really the value we're bringing. And so having said that, if we can connect with strategic thinkers of ecosystems and connect on what they need, we can bring them because the value prop draws people for this.
Okay. Yeah, I think that answered my question. Also, partly, I guess, answers Christoph's as well. All right. I think we're also nearing the top of the hour. So I think we got a pretty solid grasp of what you guys are building and doing. I won't hide the fact that until we spoke just this yesterday or on Wednesday, I had the notion that Quadratic Acceleration was more of like a concept and not so much like a product or a program that's being run. So, and I think that's going to be also very helpful for all the folks listening, because I want to believe that others also have the same misconception in mind. So with that, like, firstly, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to explain how everything works to us and to the listeners. Before we close, is there any final remark that you guys want to make? And Christoph, if there's any final question on your side. All right, Christoph, no questions. You are on mute, but I lip.
Yeah, I will let Justice and Tam. Sorry, I will let Justice and Tam, and like I will have one final word.
All right.
Justice, were you going to talk about the future? I saw that slide was up a moment ago.
I brought it up because I sense you would want to.
Okay, so this is what I'm really excited about. I am really excited about what we can do from here, and not just in like season 3. Season 3, I think, is going to be, a step change from season 2. Account abstraction, like real account abstraction, like you don't even know that you're using an account, right? This idea of like being able to onboard versus with fiat using a credit card to buy these instead of having to, somebody posted, I want to give credit to it. Narrow posted this amazing, like, this is what it's used. This is what the UX experience is like for someone who doesn't have a wallet. It's like you go to a website, tells you to log in. You don't have a wallet. You don't know how to log in. You download a MetaMask module. You install it. You have a seed phrase. Panic. You write it down. You leave. And it goes through this. It's like if we expect to grow, we need to look bigger than the people that are already using crypto, that use MetaMask and Rabby every day. And so this is coming in season 3. I think it's important. I think the infrastructure is sophisticated enough. So we have asset abstraction now. We're going to full wallet abstraction. This idea of Web3 Packs is one of the companies, one of the startups in our cohort now, and like we're already like, won't it be amazing if you could just like buy with one click an NFT that has every single asset of like the top AI projects in the QAC, the top DeFi protocols. So that's very exciting too. Having like this marketplace where people can actually just buy and sell these tokens to each other natively on the platform itself. Multiple chains is really exciting. And then it's like the really long-term idea is just like continuous QAC. Like people can launch their own bonding curve. They're part of the QAC round. They're eligible just by launching their own bonding curve. They're eligible for QAC rounds that are sponsored by chains. So something that becomes like continuous and attracts builders all year round, and not just sort of in these like seasonal gaps, that the seasonal schedule that we have now. I'm excited about the future. I know there's a lot of sentiment and people are like, it's a crime, it's a casino, it's a this, it's a that. I'm not buying any of it. I buy zero of it. I still have unshakable faith in the future of decentralization and in blockchain technologies. I'm not a maxi on anything, but I know what we're building is the future and it's inevitable.
Head down and keep building. That's definitely the way to go. And yeah, it looks like exciting times ahead for you. I'm sure we'll cross our paths in the different ecosystems that we're all involved with. So we're looking forward to seeing that journey unfold. And wherever we can also be helpful, we'll be happy to.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that once again, thank you very much for coming here. We would like to highlight builders. I like this term that we had during one of our recent episodes. We want to celebrate builders like you, but also, first request that I would have, if there is any project that you find, really exceptional in your rounds, we would like to cover them as well. We would like to have them talk on our series so that they can share the story of working with you and their success story. So that's first thing. But the other thing, talking about the future, I would love to go back to this, like, I don't know, half a year from now, a year from now, to come back after some time and to see the progress and to see where did things go and how how things are evolving. So I hope that we will be able to see each other sometime from now and and see how the adventure unfolded.
Very well said. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of today's episode. Tam, Justice, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and explaining to us what you're building. As Christoph said, we're looking forward to seeing the future, and hopefully some months from now or a year from now, we can come back to this discussion and have it again and show the world what the progress has been like.
Thank you.